Mr. Walter Rayburn, who is no stranger here, has lived in our area for many years. He is married to Jenny, and they have 2 kids, Marley and Atticus. And he has been the pulpit minister for the Owl Hollow congregation for 15 years. And before moving up to these parts, he served as a youth minister. And he said that should be plenty. That's what he said at the end of his little bio here. But I'll also say, Walter is loved by everybody who knows him. He is loved down at church camp, I know. He's loved across the road at WCA, where he teaches a lot of our upper school Bible classes. And he is a blessing, I know, to the Owl Hollow church family. And we're blessed to have him with us tonight. And he's talking tonight about the question that Jesus asked, do you want to be well? Walter, we'll turn things over to you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I do very much appreciate the opportunity to get to come and to speak to y'all tonight. But I do have a confession that I need to make right up front. I'm going to be 100% honest with y'all. Mr. Joseph called me, I don't know, it's probably been 3 or 4 months ago. He said, Walter, would you like to come and do our summer series? I said, absolutely. You know, Winchester's right up the road. I know a lot of folks here. Would love to come and do the series for y'all. And then Joseph said, okay, great. And he started going through the list of questions. He said I was one of the first ones he contacted, and I got my pick of any of the questions I wanted. And he listed about 3 of them. And he got to this one, and I said, not to him, I would never admit this to another preacher. I said, I don't remember that. Where did Jesus ask somebody if they wanted to get well? When was that ever an option? Why would he ever need to ask that question? And I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting there trying to figure out where that story is as he's reading off the rest of the list. I have no idea what he said. And I can't ask him to repeat the list. So I just went with the one that I knew. I'll take that one. Do you want to get well? And then I figured, we'll figure that out later. Well, 2 weeks later, it was later. And I go into my little computer, and I'm looking at my sermons. I'm looking at my class notes. I am searching for this question somewhere. Somewhere I had to have studied this and had to have presented a lesson on this. Not once. I couldn't even find a mention of this passage in another. I don't know if Joseph added this somehow in and it just magically appeared. But here is my deal with y'all tonight. If you are here tonight and you're saying, where in the world is that? I'm right there with you. And we will all try our best to figure this thing out together, okay? We are in John chapter 5 tonight. John chapter 5, okay? And we're just going to kind of work our way through this chapter. Once you get there, if you haven't already looked, you're probably going to recognize this thing real quick. This is the story of a man who's sitting by a pool. And he's not there by himself. There's a lot of other folks by the pool. And Jesus stumbles across this man sitting there by the pool, and this interaction starts playing out, where this man says he wants to get well, and he gives some answers for why he hasn't gotten well. And Jesus asks the famous question here, at least famous to me now, do you want to get well? Let's just start in verses 1 through 3, and let's kind of set the stage here, and then we'll go from there. And let me go ahead and tell you, I'm not in a pulpit. That means I'm in a classroom. If you got something you want to add, if you've got comments you want to throw in there, throw your hand up. We'll take this as a Bible class because I think that'll be an easy way for us to do it here. 1 through 3 of John chapter 5. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters, for an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. And I said, I remember that now. And so we start this story on the pool of Bethesda, a place with 5 porticos, just 5 porches. It's a place where people would gather, and they came there for one simple purpose. In fact, it wasn't just a place where they gathered, it was a place where they basically spent the whole day. They were hoping at that portico, at that pool, at some point in that day, that the waters would be stirred, they would move. Something would happen special that they would know it's time to get in the water. And if we make it first into the water, we'll be healed. Y'all, if you were sick and you'd been to doctors of your day and they couldn't help you and they couldn't do anything for you, and this was your one hope, how many hours would you be willing to sit by those pools waiting for the waters to move? These people would not just spend hours, but if it didn't happen on the first day, how many of you would just say, oh, well, I guess I'll just go home with this horrible disease and live with it? And how many of you would say, I'll go back tomorrow? I'll wait tomorrow. There's going to be another chance tomorrow. Well, you can imagine over the course of days, over the course of weeks, how many people started gathering at this place. You can imagine what it was like as people are laying there in pain, probably some of them moaning because of the physical pain that they're in. They're probably being dragged there by their friends, by their family, and then just left to wait by the waters. Y'all, we can imagine people having diseases that you couldn't even tell, and they're sitting there by those waters, and you might look at them and say, well, what's wrong with that person? And then the person standing right beside them would be so debilitated, you would say, how is that person even alive? All of them waiting for that one chance, that one hope. Y'all, can you imagine what it was like? Can you imagine the noises that filled the air? Can you imagine the smell that would have been there in all of this humanity? And in all of that mess, you find Jesus. As we look at this story and we start the beginning of this story, I want us to ask the simple question, where really are we? And are we in a similar situation to these people standing there at that pool? And my answer to you is, I firmly believe yes. We are in a world surrounded by sickness. We are in a world surrounded by disease, surrounded by darkness. There is so much in this world to hurt us, discourage us, to destroy the faith that we have in our God. And as we look at this world, it's not that much different than the worlds we've seen in the past. So many people think, well, look how bad it's gotten. I want you to go over to Jeremiah real quick. Jeremiah chapter 6. We'll be flipping a little bit, but not too awful much. Jeremiah chapter 6. I'm going to read verse 15 from the book of Jeremiah. Were they ashamed because of the abomination they have done? They were not even ashamed at all. They did not even know how to blush. Y'all, when you read that, what nation is Jeremiah addressing in his book? Who's he talking about? Well, he's talking about God's holy nation. He's talking about God's chosen people. And as he looked down through the prophet Jeremiah, Jehovah would say, I am looking at these people and they are committing these horrible sins. Filth has spread throughout their streets. It has corrupted from top to bottom. This is a place on the brink of destruction. Don't forget, the end of this book is the promise that God is about to take over the holy city of Jerusalem using the Babylonians. This is a place that has pushed so far, God is saying, it's too far, it's too much. I'm about to draw the line in the sand. And in that place, he would describe it as the people are so lost in sin, they don't even know how to blush when they commit a sin anymore. And we say, man, America is just so bad. Look at the world. Look at how horrible it has become. No, I'm not so sure that the world hasn't always looked like this. Oh, don't get me wrong. There might be some things that are thrown in our face a little bit more. There might be some more shame that is lost, but God is looking at these people and saying they're not ashamed of their sin, and that's usually what we say. Well, you know, America's always had sin, but now we're not even ashamed of it. Well, look at Jeremiah. He's saying God's people weren't ashamed of their sin either. No, we've been living amongst the filth for a long, long time. That's why God, through the church, called us out of that filth. But what I really want you to notice here is the fact that in the midst of all of that, as sickness spreads, there's honestly not a single one of us that gets to avoid it. Not the sickness we're talking about. We don't get to somehow miss the sickness that we're talking about, because every single person in this room, well, I see one that isn't, one's too small. Most of us that are in this room right now have all tasted what sin tastes like. We've tasted the sickness of this world. Romans chapter 3, verse number 23, for all have fallen short of the glory of God. We don't have the ability to miss out on that sickness, even as we dwell amongst it. But don't forget, the end of our story tonight is one, Jesus, who will walk amongst the sickness and who will ask the question, would you like to get well? Would you like to be better? Would you like another chance? So for all the filth, for all the darkness, don't lose the light that is Jesus walking amongst the stands in this particular story as we start out. Now let's keep going, verses 4 through 6. Oh, I need to get back to John. I'm about to read more from Jeremiah. John chapter 5, beginning again in verse 4. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. A man was there who had been ill for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time in that condition, he said to him, do you wish to get well? Here's this man, 38 years. Can you imagine being in this condition for 38 years? Can you imagine how many people he would have talked to try to get help? Can you imagine how many doctors he would have been to? Can you imagine how much money he would have spent? The real answer to that is we don't have a clue. My guess is he spent whatever he had to try to get well. My guess is he's down to his last hope. My guess is he's there at that well every single day, and he's hoping for the waters to move, and he's hoping somebody will take pity upon him in that moment. My guess is this is a desperate, desperate man. I can't prove that, but I can tell you if I had been paralyzed for 38 years and there was a chance at hope, I'd be a desperate man. I'd be doing whatever it took to do whatever I needed to do to at least get that chance, that one simple chance to be healed. And so as you look at this thing, though, let's just consider what this man is relying on. We won't even start before the story. Let's jump straight into the story. Well, when Jesus asked him about it, his response is that he's hoping for a friend, somebody, maybe a stranger. This man had put his hope in other people. How many of you ever put your hope in other people? I won't ask y'all to raise your hands. We're not a raising hand congregation. That's okay. Let me ask it this way. Just do this or this. I'm good with either one. How many of you have ever been let down when you put your hope into somebody? Man, it's a dangerous game to play. On the one hand, if you think about it, there's times where we need people. It's not like we can just go through this life and never put trust in somebody, never put hope in somebody, never have faith in somebody that they're going to do the right thing at the right moment, never have faith in somebody that they will help me if I'm in need. We live in that world where we have to have each other at times. There's situations and places in our life where we have to have some hope in others. And yet we all know that as soon as you put your hope in others, you are setting yourself up for either a great disappointment or a great success. Somebody's either going to prove to you, yes, humanity is good, there are good people in this world and they will help you, or they're going to prove to you, boy, that was a mistake. What were you thinking putting your trust in somebody else? And the truth of the matter is, sometimes it's a toss-up. Hopefully, we kind of increase our odds for a good reception, because hopefully when we need help, we're going to turn to who? We're going to turn to our brothers, to our sisters. That should increase our odds of finding people who will help us. I think that's one of the reasons God gave us the church, to provoke one another to good works, to helping each other and encouraging it. But for this man, that's not the case. He's put his hope in people for a long time, and up to this point, guess what? It's disappointed. He's got nothing to show for it but disappointment. I want somebody to, well, never mind, I'll just read it. I don't know if y'all like to read or not. I'm going to go over to Matthew 3 and verse 17. Matthew 3 and verse 17. You might want to mark there. This paralytic has put his hope in his friends. I want you to listen to what Jesus says. Or I'm sorry, what God says. Verse 17, and behold, a voice out of the heavens said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Who do you put your hope in? This man had his hope in some of his friends. Number two, this man had his hope in that water. He had put his faith in the water. He thought the water would make him well. He thought it was all about the water. If I get my body into the water, then all is well. Boy, that starts sounding and taking on some symbolism there, doesn't it? For us, we can understand that. The water makes us well. The water takes away our sin. We call on the name of the Lord. We appeal to Him for a clean conscience, and He washes those sins away in the water of baptism. And we start saying, wait, I can really make a connection to this. But here's the thing. If you went into the waters of baptism thinking that the waters were the special part, I'm afraid you had it backwards there. The water wasn't the special part of your baptism, was it? The Jesus was the special part of your baptism. Why do we use water then? Because Jesus told us to use water. Because it cleanses us. Is there a lot of symbolism to it? Of course, we're not taking away any of the power of the water and the symbolism of it. But if you remove Jesus from the water, do you have salvation? If you put your hope in the water, you've missed the Savior. And if you've missed the Savior, how did you grab salvation? This man, he wanted the water. He thought the water was what he needed when in fact salvation was standing right in front of him. I want to read for y'all real quick. I want to read from Matthew chapter 3 and verse number 17. And behold, a voice out of the heaven said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. This man was putting his faith in the water. He was putting his faith in his friends. And last but not least, he was putting his faith in this unseen force. This thing. He didn't describe it. The writer does, but it's this thing that's moving the water. That's really where the power is. I need to get in the water, but there's this force behind it. You know how many people are putting their faith in some unseen force around them for good or evil? They're putting everything in one big basket. They remove God from the equation, and it comes down to, well, I believe in this thing. I can't describe it. I don't know what it is. Some of them will even use words you might have heard before. They'll use words like, well, I believe in a God. Some of them might get real close. They'll even say, I believe in Jehovah. You know Jehovah, right? I believe in Him. And then you start asking them, can you tell me about Him? What do you know about this God? And they're going to treat it the way this man treated the stirring of the waters. Well, He's this being. He loves me. Oh, that's good. Well, that's it. He loves me. That's it? That's all? 66 books of the Bible. We sing them over here at chapel all the time. The kids know every one of them. 66 books of the Bible. And all you got out of that, the one thing, was God loves you. Here's the thing. For a lot of people, they're saying to themselves, well, hey, that's the most important thing. Got to have that love at its foundation. But I got a question for you. How many of you would pay $500,000 for somebody to build you a house, and they give you a call one day and they say, your house is ready, come get the keys? And you pull up in your car and you jump out and you're excited. You're ready for that brand new house. It's going to be amazing. And when you get there, you notice something weird. Man, that's a short house. And you jump out of your car and you look, and there's no doors, there's no windows. Where's my stairs? Where's my steps? They laid a foundation. They charged you $5,000 we take it. They charged you $500,000 for your foundation, and they said, your house is done. How many of you are happy with that as your house? God laid a foundation of love in His book. But then He built upon that foundation. He told this amazing story. He showed Himself as the sacrificial lamb. He showed Himself as the good shepherd. He showed Himself as all these pieces of this puzzle. And if you put the pieces of the puzzle together, you will be blessed beyond measure in your life, because you will know how to respond to Him. You will know what He wants, and you will gladly do whatever He wants because you know the reward that He gives to you. Far too many people build this little bitty foundation and they think they got a house. Don't stop with the foundation. This man was stopping with the foundation. Build your house and look at what God will make out of your life. I'm going to read real quick from Matthew chapter 3 and verse 17. And behold, a voice out of the heavens said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Anybody noticed anything weird about the last 3 verses I've read? Did y'all pick up on that? That was my test to see if y'all were awake or not. And some of y'all, I think, y'all left me. That's okay. It's because there is no other answer that I can give. I can turn to one other passage. You know what it says? This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to Him. I can give you that one if you prefer. But when you start talking about what people put their hope in, when you start talking about what people want, when you start talking about where you find your hope for your salvation, for making your life better, there is no other answer than Jesus Christ. We don't trust in this movement of the water that this man trusts in. Trust in the guy standing in front of you. Don't trust in your friends. They've abandoned you. Trust in the stranger standing in front of you. Don't trust in that immovable force that's out there. Trust in Jesus, who's right in front of you. And if we will trust in Jesus, who's right in front of us, He will not disappoint us. And it is then in verse 6, we've already read it, where our question comes. Do you want to get well? You know, I got to be honest with you. I told you I was starting from scratch on this thing. I read that and I went, yeah, isn't that kind of obvious? He's there at the pool. He's telling you why he can't get well. He's telling you what stopped him from getting well. Jesus, I think it's pretty clear this guy would love to get well. Why are you asking him that? And y'all, I think it comes down to this. Jesus isn't asking him, would you like to? I think what Jesus is asking here is, are you willing to pay the price? You say, wait a minute, I thought Jesus didn't charge for His healings. Well, hold on. Let me move through here. But for right now, we need to understand what the question really means. It's obvious He wants to get well. By the way, if it wasn't obvious, would Jesus have to ask Him for information anyway? No. It's one of the things I hope you've learned throughout the course of these questions. Jesus never asks a question for information. Jesus asks a question to prove a point. So He's asking him this question, do you really want it? Are you willing to do what it takes to get it? It may not be easy for you. It may be difficult. There may be a hard road ahead of you. If we do this thing, you need to understand there are going to be some consequences that come to you. We'll talk about those consequences in just a minute. But in that moment, He asked him, do you want to get well? And you know what that man's answer is? What do I got to do? Yes, I want to get well. Now, here's what I want us to do right now. I want us to compare this man, and I want us to dig a little bit deeper as we go through the rest of this story. Because what you're about to encounter is, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler alert here. I'm going to have to. I couldn't help it. I didn't want to, but I couldn't figure out another way of working this lesson where I couldn't do it. This man is going to be healed. He met Jesus. He wanted to be healed. Jesus was willing to heal him. Shocker of all shockers. This man is going to be healed. Now I need to give you some background on the rest of this story. So this man gets healed, but we got a problem. Well, at least some people have a problem. Because there's this group of Pharisees that are there, and they see this man. They've known him too. He's been there for 38 years. Of course they know who he is. But the big problem is this. It's the Sabbath day. Uh-oh. You can't heal on the Sabbath day. Y'all, they go one step further. It's a step I've never seen them take. They point at the man who Jesus said, get up and pick up your pallet and go. They point at him and say, you're breaking the Sabbath because you're not allowed to even carry your pallet home from the healing spot to take back to your room at your house. If he has a house, I'm assuming he has a house. They don't just go for him. It's then that he looks at him and says, whoa, 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 this guy told me to do that. And whenever he told me to do that, I was able to get up from 38 years of being a paralyzed person, and I carried my pallet. You want to do something, don't take it up with me. Take it up with the guy that healed me. They look at him, and you know what they say? We'll take it up with him. We're not scared of him. Who is he? You know what the man says? Here's another thing. I don't think I've ever seen this in a passage. He says, I don't know who that guy was. I didn't catch his name. He told me to get up. I got up. Everybody started moving around me, and I took off. I don't know who he was. And so they say, well, okay. And the story kind of disappears a little bit. And then all of a sudden, we're back in the temple, and guess who's there? That same guy. I don't know if he's still carrying his pallet or not. He's there again. And Jesus is back in front of him. And Jesus comes up and starts talking to him again. And they have another little conversation back and forth. We'll talk a little bit about that conversation at the end. But then guess what the guy does? He goes and snitches on Jesus. He goes to the Pharisees. He got away with it. He didn't have to tell them anything, but he goes back to the Pharisees. He said, hey, I found that guy that healed me. You want him? He's over there. Found out what his name's Jesus. You want him? And a lot of people look at that, and I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea why he did it. Some people say, well, he was motivated by good, pure motives. He was just trying to do something to show these Pharisees who it was. Others say, no, man, he was just trying to get up with the Pharisees and try to buddy up with them. I don't know. I'm not going to guess at this man's motives. I will tell you this, that is weird stuff. That Jesus heals this man, and this man who has the chance to just walk away, call it quits, instead makes it a point to go back to the Pharisees and talks to them. And now what I want us to do real quick is I just want us to take those Pharisees and I want us to put them over here somewhere, and I want us to take that man and I want to put us over here somewhere. And I want you to ask yourself as you go through this idea, okay, what was the difference between the two? When Jesus asked the paralytic, do you want to get well? His answer was, absolutely. Let me ask you a question. What do you think the answer from the Pharisees would have been on that day? What do you think they would have said if Jesus came to them and said, would you like to get well? What do you suppose their answer would be? And he probably would have, all right? Which is kind of the point all the way around. You think the Pharisees would have got healed by Jesus? Guys, if we want to be healed, we're going to have to figure out what separated that man from those Pharisees, and we're going to have to bring them together. Because we don't want to be like the Pharisees of this story. We want to be like that man. We want to be healed. We want to leave this life healed and cleansed and washed clean and in power of Jesus. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to figure out what is different between these two. And I think you'll see a couple of differences as we go through it. Number one, John chapter 5, verse 3 and 4. We already talked about this man, so this will kind of just be a review, but then we're going to jump to the Pharisees. This man wanted to be well. He already had a desire. He already showed you the desire, didn't he? We talked about that. Jesus, why are you even asking that question? Obviously, he wants to get well. Flip over to the Pharisees. Mark chapter 2, verse number 17. Mark 2, verse number 17. Jesus has been eating with the sinners, with the tax collectors, right? He's been in that dinner with these people. And the Pharisees have been standing out there watching him, and they're watching him, and they're not happy. Shocker of all shockers, the Pharisees aren't happy with Jesus. This time, it's not that he's doing something on the Sabbath day. This time, it's that he's sitting there and eating with sinners. How dare you eat with sinners? I can't believe you would eat with sinners. And the Pharisees are standing out there, And when Jesus starts hearing them complaining and talking, verse 17, Jesus says, "It is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." You know, that passage used to really bother me. I didn't get it. Because as you read that, y'all, have you ever heard the Pharisees from the mouth of Jesus being referred to as the righteous? But that's what it seems to be here, isn't it? He's talking to these men, these Pharisees, that are condemning him for eating with the sinners and the tax collectors. By the way, we know based on the evidence of every single meal that we have, where we see the actual instruction that's going on at the meal, the people at that meal weren't just sitting back eating and having a good time and talking about the weather. What you see is that when we get the results from those dinners, you know what Jesus was doing the entire time he's eating? He's teaching. He's changing. Probably the best example of that, little old, I almost said Nehemiah because I was thinking of the jokes. Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was the wee little man, remember? Climbed up in the sycamore tree, remember? Waiting for Jesus, remember? Anybody remember what he was? He's a tax collector. He's a tax collector. He's a sinner. He's unrighteous. And there's Jesus saying, I want to come and I want to eat with you. And you see the meal unfold. And y'all, by the time the meal is over, what happens to the sinner, the tax collector? What happens to Zacchaeus? His whole life changed. Jesus, I'm going to do everything I can to pay back what I've stolen. I'm going to change my life completely. I'm not going to be that person anymore. Does that sound like they just sat around talking about how good the dessert was at the table? No. When Jesus talked to sinners and tax collectors at the table, it was so that he could reach into their heart and he could try to change them. From the inside out, he's giving them a message of salvation. And in that moment, these Pharisees are condemning him and talking bad about him, and he looks at them and he calls them the righteous. Jesus, what's happening? And I don't know, maybe I hadn't figured it out. Joseph, you might want to help me on this, but here's what I came up with. Joseph, don't do that. He just leaves me hanging up here like I'm just a cat out to dry. Anyway, as far as I can tell, here's what Jesus meant. He wasn't saying those guys actually are righteous. What he's saying is, look, I'm here to call the people who realize they're not. And you guys that he would call hypocrites, brood of vipers, guys that he would give 8 condemnations to all in one set sermon, you guys, y'all are so filled with the filth and defiled by the filth of the world, but in your head you think you're already clean. I can't do anything for you. You want to know the difference, the main difference between these two groups, the one that gets healed in our story and the one that instead condemns the one who heals? One group wants to be healed and one group doesn't. They already think they are. These Pharisees couldn't be touched by a message of salvation. They already thought they were saved. They couldn't be touched by a message of grace. They didn't think they needed it. They couldn't be touched by a lesson of obedience. They thought they were already doing it. There was nothing they would hear from Jesus. Number 2, right behind it, we haven't got there yet. Let's go on back to John chapter 5. Let's read 8 and 9. Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet and walk." And immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. This man accepts the commandments of Jesus Christ. Think it made sense to him? Would it make sense to you? You've been laying there for 38 years. How many people have walked up and down or past you? How many people have you seen? How many people have you talked to? And here's this man, and he just says, just get up. You think there was a moment of hesitation for this man? I don't know, we're not told. But I can tell you, if it was me, I'd be thinking, huh? No special remedy? No special words? No cool spell? Nothing? You got nothing. Just get up. That's it. Just get up. But as soon as he heard it, the Bible says, whether he had his doubts or not, what did he do? I'll get up. And up he got, and there he went. What about the Pharisees? Did they do a whole lot of listening to Jesus? Nah. They condemned him. They tried to convince nobody to listen to him. They rejected him. They called his work the work of the devil. They did everything they could to destroy him, and then they finally killed him. No, they weren't going to listen to him, but this man did. John chapter 14 and verse 15 tells us that if you love Jesus, you will keep his commandments. And then last but not least, because these two men do have something that's kind of in common. The man on the pallet and the Pharisees condemning Jesus, they both have their excuses. You say, well, where's the man on the pallet's excuses? Well, you heard what he said. I just can't get to it in time. I'm just not good enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not strong enough. I can't get in those waters in time. There's no way anybody could heal me. He kept himself from the healing. But if we flip that around and look at the Pharisees, you know what's even worse than keeping yourself from the healing? Keeping yourself from the healer. They had all the excuses in the world to stay away from Jesus, to block him out and to shut him out of their hearts, of their life. I think you can find one similarity there, and it's a similarity we certainly don't want. All right. Somebody's looking at their clock. I'm going to move. I got it. I don't promise it. I got it. Here we go. Ready? I'm going to wrap it up. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. Give me 3. John chapter 5 and verse 14, I do want to finish this thing up. In this conversation, as they go back and forth whenever they bump back into each other at the temple, remember, the man's there and he finds out who Jesus is and he goes and tells the people. Here's what happens in that conversation. Verse number 14. Jesus says, "Behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore so that nothing worse happens to you." I told you, I started from scratch, so I turned to different sources. You know what almost all of them were saying? Nearly all of them were saying, well, this proves that this man's physical problem came from his sin. He must have done something, and that's what caused it. And now Jesus is saying, look, if you go back to that sin, it's going to happen. And certainly, there are physical ailments that come from a sinful life. We understand that, but I really, really don't think that's what Jesus is saying here. Jesus made it a point at one point in his life to say, it wasn't this man's sin and it wasn't his father's sin that led him to this blindness, right? So I don't think he's just reversing it. But here's what I think he's doing. He looks at this man and he says, your physical body was completely and totally broken. It was shattered by this world. Then I'll leave you with that until next week. I'm just kidding. It was completely and totally shattered by this world. There was nothing left for it. But it's healed. It's made better. But I'm going to give you a warning. Your physical body can be in perfect shape and your soul can still be destroyed, just like you used to be. And if you don't give yourself the opportunity to leave the sins behind, there is a worse fate than being paralyzed for 38 years and laying on a pallet hoping to get well. That worse fate, dying lost in your sins. And so Jesus points to this man and he says, make sure you stay away from that thing that can still kill your soul. Forget the paralysis. That's nothing compared to an eternity in judgment, separated from your God. If you take nothing else from this lesson, I hope you'll take that with you. Jesus, even when he healed the body, he was always focused on healing the soul. I thank y'all very much for your attention. 1 minute over. That ain't bad for me. You can ask Jenny back there. Oh my, this is on time for me, for sure. But I thank y'all for your attention tonight.